Trae Young, Reggie Miller 2.0. Good morning and good night, Knicks fans. There will be no dancing in the streets this weekend, Ed. Oh, no, no, no. At least not for those wearing orange and blue. Unless, of course, we are speaking about the first place New York Mets, albeit early in the month of June. I digress. But while the Hawks, Ed, are soaring, the Knicks are snoring, and the LA Lakers could be set to watch the sunrise rather early this evening out west. Aha! Before LeBron James loses the first round playoff series of his NBA career. Keep it locked right here. Come on in. Step in the arena.
This guy has made it through rounds playing the style that he plays.
He named every one. It's like this guy named all 5 of my game-winning shots from 2008, 2009.
I played with two of the most exciting players ever to play the game, Allen Iverson and Vince Carter.
Well, Ed, I've already worked 29 hours today, and I really don't want to talk basketball or any sports with you. But that's why we have our insider of insiders joining us tonight. I'm so tired, my friend. I really am. Our mystery guest will be revealed momentarily. But in the meantime, he's the man that can't get enough of podcasting, Edgar Burgos. And I'm the really tired guy, Bobby C. And behind the scenes is our producer extraordinaire, Randy Cruz. And we, of course, thank you for being on the other end of this audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, or on the video side on YouTube and live on Twitter. For Step in the Arena on the Cruise Control Podcast Network in partnership with Hard to Guard Media. So, Ed, I'd like to think that the perfect place for us to start this evening, intros aside, having a little bit of fun, of course, at the Knicks' expense and the prospects of the Lakers losing in the first round playoff series. And I just totally love what Mr. Lillard has done in Portland. But I'd like to think that we can start tonight's podcast by saying that you have absolutely, positively hexed the Knicks in this postseason, and your undying fandom of LeBron James has the Lakers on the brink of elimination as they trail the Phoenix Suns 3-2 with the series back in LA tonight for game number 6. So what do you have to say for yourself, co-host Edgar Burgos, who will not leave me alone on a Thursday night when all I would like to do is sleep? I don't want to do podcasts with you anymore. I've changed my mind.
The first thing I want to say is
don't leave me alone.
The first thing I want to say is welcome back. You was missed last week. We had Tim Thomas come on.
I saw
obviously, yeah. So it definitely was. We definitely missed you.
Thank you. I do miss seeing you. I don't know if I miss spending a full hour with you, but I miss seeing you once a week for.
No, but today, today we got one of the best out there. He's gonna give us some info on the Nets. I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty to talk about. I mean, definitely trying to, like I said, have a little bit of fun in our intro this evening. We always try to, I think I'm running out of jokes in terms of being able to rag on you. So I've got to turn attention elsewhere. And definitely plenty to talk about in basketball because, Lakers, I think, are in a bit of trouble. And I know that no one really cares what you have to say. No one really cares what I have to say, or I would like to think no one cares what we have to say. We'll say that with Stephanie. I really do think that people will care about what our guest has to say tonight. So I would say without further ado, let's bring in the man that has lots of opinions. We welcome in popular basketball insider from the New York Times, Forbes, and NJ.com, and, of course, the popular zagsblog.com. Zags himself, Adam Zagoria.
Fellas, how you guys doing? Looks like you're having a lot of fun in the studio there tonight.
What's happening?
Zags, we can't figure anything out. I'm exhausted. Ed had a microphone, but it doesn't work. The people that I honestly think we should not do the podcast. What we should do is like a behind the scenes of the podcast, because that would be what would be number one on Spotify.
I think you guys are ready for a 10-part Michael Jordan type behind the scenes.
100%. Definitely. And like I said in the intro, I'm definitely excited to be able to have you on the show. You've been a longtime friend, of course, to both Ed and I. And, I miss seeing you in press boxes near and far. I'm hoping that that's going to be changing with things looking up, I would say, with the pandemic. And it will be great to get back to, seeing some games live. I have had the chance here and there, but, of course, not the way that it used to be.
Yeah, things are changing. And I've had enough of the masks. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like we're returning to normal. And you got to be proud of New York City. We suffered, and people did the hard work and put their masks on, and now we're getting back to normal.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like we're turning the corner. And, again, I make some jokes about the Knicks, but I think that if we don't want to start with the Lakers conversation tonight, because I think that'll be a good one, because I know that Ed is heartbroken that, LeBron is close to being out of the playoffs. But we could probably start with the Knicks conversation, because I think it's a tough sell here. Because do you look at the fact that the Knicks had such a great season, or are you disappointed as a Knicks fan? Are you disappointed that it comes, crashing down the way that it did, especially after finally winning a playoff game? And it looked like we won Game 7 of the NBA Finals in downtown Manhattan that night. So
yeah, they stopped traffic after winning one game. I mean, look, I think it's big picture. You have to view the overall Knicks season as a success. I mean, I think they were only predicted to win in the low 20s by Vegas in terms of number of games. And they go out and well exceeded that, winning more than 40 games and becoming the number 4 seed. So they had the most improved player in the league, Julius Randle, and a serious candidate for Coach of the Year in Tibbs. So I think if you told people that at the beginning of the season, they definitely exceeded expectations. But then obviously, they did well in the regular season because they played hard every night under Tibbs. They beat a lot of teams who weren't necessarily playing as hard as they could during the regular season. But the problem is when you get in the postseason, the playoffs, everybody's playing hard. And, they ran into a more talented team that had the best player in the series in Trae Young, a longer, more athletic team with more players who could score. And, it's obvious that the postseason was disappointing. They only won one game. It would have been nice if they won last night and, forced it back to Atlanta for Game 6. They just don't have that superstar. I mean, Julius Randle had a great season. He was a great player during the season, but what they really need to get to that next level is a Dame Lillard or a Bradley Beal, somebody like that, who's going to be the alpha male, the superstar. And, Julius Randle and RJ maybe are the, second, third, fourth type options on a team like that. But, you look at these other teams that are advancing in the playoffs and they just clearly have more talent, including the Hawks.
Yeah.
Zags, by the way, that was not my phone. I'm just going to put that out there that was definitely Edgar Burgos'
That was not
phone
mine.
that just went off. No, that it must be Zags' phone.
It was my phone.
Oh, man.
Blowing up.
You're in trouble, bud.
So
Go ahead, Ed.
I was going to tell you, the whole Julius Randle thing. I want you to put your GM hat on. Do you give him a 4-year extension for $106 million? Because I feel like me and Bobby been arguing about this, talking about it the whole season. Me personally, I don't do it because I never thought, obviously I feel like he got exposed in the playoffs. He's a real good player. He's definitely a number 3 player. He had a great season, but that's a lot of money for somebody who might not give you, produce in the playoffs like he produces in the regular season.
Yeah, I would say I would do it. I mean, I know they have a lot of cap space, right? I think they have more than $50 million in cap space, right? So they have some options. It gotta come down to who wants to play in New York. Not everybody does. He wants to play here. He's embraced putting the Knicks on his shoulders. He wanted to bring the city back, and he kind of did that, to some extent this year. And you got to hope that the Knicks have established a culture here, a positive culture under Tibbs and Leon Rose and these guys, where free agents are going to want to come here in the future. I mean, that's obviously been a big issue for them, under Jim Dolan. Let's be frank. Players didn't want to come here. Kevin Durant famously said the Knicks weren't cool anymore. So in Julius Randle, you had a guy who did want to be here and embrace New York. The same thing with RJ. So there's something to be said for that. And, it's not clear yet what other big-time free agents really want to come to New York. That may happen down the road, but these guys do want to be here now, and that's worth something.
Adam, how much of Randall's struggles in this first-round playoff series do you, attest to basically the play of Clint Capella, or do you just think it's Randall kind of fading in the first round?
I think the Hawks, they obviously double-teamed him a lot, forced him into a lot of bad options and bad, bad choices. He made some bad decisions. I think he only shot 25% for the series. And it's, again, there was a lot on his shoulders taking the Knicks to their first playoff series in 8 years. I think the Hawks were just, longer, more athletic. They played smart defense, double teaming him. And it's, again, the Knicks need another one or two options ahead of him to take that next step in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they could use someone like Trae Young, I would say, would be a good place to start.
I covered Trae Young in high school, man. I saw him win the Peach Jam, which is the culmination of the Nike EYBL series in the summer. He was on the same team with Michael Porter, who's lighting it up tonight for the Nuggets. And they won, about 4 or 5 years ago, the Peach Jam. And, it's really amazing to watch these guys develop from high school kids, the guys who are dominating NBA games. And you got to give – I know the Knicks fans gave Trae a lot of – they chanted at him. They serenaded him. The one guy spit on him. That wasn't cool. But you got to give Trae Young props for having the cojones to come in here. He had 3 30-point games at the Garden in the playoffs. I think only MJ is the only other guy to do that. Trae took his bow after the game and gave a shout out to Broadway and New York City. So, that's you got to give him props. I mean, he's a young star in this league.
Yeah, I think the Knicks finally have their new villain. Like I said, I mean, he becomes the new version of Reggie Miller in so many ways. And, realizing that the Hawks will probably be a contender moving forward, I think they were one of the better stories in the second half of the NBA season, very much like the Knicks. I still think, something that I spoke about recently is the fact that I think Tibbs really got screwed out of being coach of the year. I think he should have won that award. And, I think he did a great job for the Knicks this year and deserved more credit for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, what Monty did in Phoenix is, pretty amazing, and they're still playing. But I think everybody realizes Tibbs is a great coach. And, just as far as the Hawks, I think that'll be an interesting series with the Sixers. I mean, between Capella and Collins, they have their own, athletic, long, big guys who are going to cause problems, especially if Embiid, is banged up. So I think the playoffs are really interesting. I mean, obviously the Nets, you guys are talking mostly Knicks here, but the Nets are the favorite to win it all, even though they're a brand new team. But it really is kind of wide open, especially if the Lakers go down early here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you covered the Nets. How tough of the series against Milwaukee do you think this can be for the Nets?
Yeah, I was just on a Zoom call earlier today with Steve Nash and Blake Griffin and some of the players. And, one of the reporters asked Steve, does this have the potential to be a classic series? And he said, definitely yes. I mean, look, the Bucks took 2 out of 3 from the Nets during the regular season. I think these are the 2 most high-powered offenses in the NBA. You're going to see some really high-scoring games. The Bucks have their own big 3, obviously, with Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis. So you're going to see some fun, exciting games. And, I think the Nets are just fascinating. I mean, we've never seen an offensive, a team with this much offensive firepower really in the history of the league or in recent memory. What James Harden's done with them is phenomenal. If you go back a few months, right, the rap on him when he got traded in January was, he's a ball hog. He forced his way out of Houston. How are they going to all play with just one basketball with him and KD and Kyrie? And James Harden has really, I don't know if he's reinvented himself, but he's subjugated his own ego and personality to really facilitating and distributing the ball. Joe Harris was talking today on the Zoom about how Harden will come down and kind of whisper in his ear, giving Joe advice on where he can spot up and get open on the floor, and how Harden's doing that with all the players on the Nets and trying to get them all in their best spots to score. And we saw what they did to obviously the Celtics were undermanned and didn't have Jaylen Brown, but the Nets at any time can go on one of these 20-4 runs and just kind of blow a team out. But the Bucks also are very explosive offensively, so it should be a lot of fun.
Are they going to miss Jeff Green and DeAndre Jordan? Because he didn't play in the first series. You think he's going to get some minutes in this series?
Yeah, well, first of all, Steve Nash said that Jeff Green was progressing, but he couldn't, commit to whether he was going to play Saturday. They initially said 10 days, and that was, about a week ago. So hopefully they get him back sometime in the series. I think obviously the Nets are going to need, Claxton, KD, DeAndre Jordan, Jeff Green, if he's healthy. They're going to need their big guys to play D on Lopez and on Giannis. So that certainly could be a weakness for the Nets. But I think you'll see some fascinating matchups with Claxton and KD on Giannis, and they were talking about how they have to really screen well with Drew Holiday to get their own players in good spots offensively. So, I think whoever comes out of this series will probably be the favorite in the East, depending on what happens with Embiid's health. And again, it's just fascinating to me. The Nets are the favorites in Vegas to win the whole thing, and this team's, their big three has only played together for about a dozen games.
Yeah, I mean, and Adam, that was a storyline even a couple of weeks ago when we were talking here on the podcast, was the fact that, there hasn't been a lot of time for their stars to gel together. When you have these conversations about, how Knicks fans, should be feeling about the season and the expectations and all of this and that, and kind of grading how things went, you look on the other side of town with the Nets and knowing that they have all this firepower. If they don't reach the NBA finals, if they don't win the whole thing, what kind of season is that for them? Because we're seeing that this right now, that the trend even with other teams, because the conversation this week about the Boston Celtics and, them not, kind of doing a good job these last few years to take talented teams and win it all. It's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, you hit a lot of good points there. I mean, first of all, look, let's face facts. New York is a Knicks town. It's always going to be a Knicks town. I got all kinds of buddies hit me up on text during the games. They're upset with Randall and RJ and how they played. Everybody's got an opinion. Spikes at the games. The Knicks really are, New York City's team, and that was obvious, even though they just celebrated after winning one game and stopped traffic like they won the NBA Finals. And the Nets are never going to be that team in New York. That said, I do agree with you that it's almost a failure. I think they have to at least get to the conference finals, if not the NBA finals. Otherwise it's a failure for this Nets team. So much is expected of them. From the time KD and Kyrie teamed up in 2019 and came here, everybody was like, oh my God. And that was just the two of them. And then they obviously had to give up a lot of their, homegrown pieces that had built up the Nets in the past few years. Jared Allen and Karis LeVert to get the Harden deal. And then you bring in James Harden, and everybody's like, oh, my God, who's going to stop this team? And then the storyline for much of the season has been they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They were, 27th, 28th for a lot of this season in defensive efficiency. And, can you win an NBA championship? Can you win an NBA championship when you're playing defense like that? Can you outscore teams, 130 to 119 every night, 125 to 115? And they seem like they're able to do that so far. So that'll be interesting to see. I know Charles Barkley's been on the record saying it's championship or bust for the Nets. I think they have to at least get to the finals. I mean, the window with those three guys is really only going to be a couple of years. But, again, I'm fascinated like everyone else to see how it turns out.
I think it would be I think it would be ironic if the Lakers are out and the Nets don't win the championship.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of teams. I mean, if you look at the top, 4 or 5 favorites to win, the Clippers and the Lakers, I think, are in the Lakers are the second favorite. The Clippers are third and fourth. They could both be out in the first round, 2 of the top 4 favorites. And I think the Bucks maybe are the third favorite. The Nets beat them. They'll be out. So, you could have 3 or 4 of the Vegas favorites out here by the second round. I forget what you said before that. Sorry.
No, just saying it would be ironic if let's say the path to winning a championship might be easier and the Nets somehow don't even get to the finals to potentially win one.
Yeah, and also what people are going to watch the playoffs no matter what. But if you get an NBA finals of say Utah and the Bucks or Utah and the Sixers, are people going to care as much as are they going to be as compelled to watch as if they're watching the Big Three or LeBron? Probably not.
Go ahead, Ed. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No problem. I was gonna say, obviously you covered the Nets most of the season. Do you feel like Steve Nash is gonna be there for, quite a few years, or you think he's going to be like a short-term head coach?
Yeah, I don't know, Ed. That's I think it's a tough question early on. I mean, I think he is the perfect coach for this team. He's a true players coach. He really defends Kyrie whenever something crazy happens. Kyrie missed some games for personal reasons or whatever craziness is going on with Kyrie. Steve Nash always has his back. And he's not too far removed from playing in the league. He's a former two-time MVP. These guys all know him and respect him. And it seems to have worked out really well so far. So, how long he's going to be there, I don't know. I think he could, I think he'll probably coach in the league for a long time. Maybe he goes to another team eventually. But I think for this window, the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years with this team, he seems like the perfect fit. I mean, he's got the perfect temperament for them.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the Nets, Adam, could go get Coach K. He's available.
Yeah, I was saying yesterday it would be hilarious, right, if Duke hired Brad Stevens as their coach and Coach K went to the Celtics. I mean, that's obviously not going to happen. But that's there's obviously it was a huge news day yesterday. I know you guys focus mostly on the NBA, but I do a lot of college. It's obviously huge news that Coach K is going to retire after the season. Roy Williams retired earlier. I did a story today on Forbes. I talked to Jim Boeheim, who's going to be 77 years old in November. He told me he might coach until he's 80. And I believe him. He's got both of his sons on the team this year. And, I was teasing him. I said, your golf game must not be very good. You don't want to go play golf like Roy. And he said his golf game wasn't that good. But, yeah, look, I mean, Coach K, obviously his legacy there is incredible. With both the national team winning 3 gold medals as a head coach and 5 NCAA championships at Duke. And, a lot of the Kentucky guys and people like to rip Duke for kind of producing busts in the NBA, which, there have been some. But if you look at Kyrie, Jason Tatum, Zion, RJ, there's a lot of Brandon Ingram, a lot of really great Duke players in the NBA right now. And from a recruiting standpoint, back in the day, you guys remember Duke used to get, program guys, right? Jay Billis and guys who were there for 4 years. And Coach K kind of took a page out of John Calipari's book at Kentucky about 10 years ago and started getting more of the one and done guys. In the era of the one and dones, only 2 teams have won a national championship, relying primarily on one and dones. That Kentucky team in 2012 that had Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who 2012, who went on to become the top 2 picks in the draft. And then Duke in 2015 had Jahlil Okafor, Justice Winslow, and Tyus Jones, and they won a title with a bunch of one and dones. And that's hard to do. So, Coach K, I think part of it is he's a little tired of all the changes and the transfer portal and all that, and he wants to spend time with his grandkids and his family.
Well, he'll get the swan song and then also a chance to win. I guess it would be 6th national championship, right, on the way out the door.
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to happen. I think it's all about experience now in college. I mean, Baylor was loaded with older guards. Villanova is going to be really good next year with older guards. Gonzaga is going to have an older team. UCLA is going to have an older team. But certainly people are going to watch Duke, and there'll be a lot of hype. And he'll do a farewell tour at all the stadiums.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this? Obviously, like this, you cover high school and the whole change, and the overtime elite, and G League, and your opinion, because you've been covering high school sports for a very long time, so you started to see the shift before a lot of other people. And what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, right? Because if you're a top high school prospect right now, you have a whole bunch of options that guys didn't have even 5 years ago. You can go to college, to Kentucky or Duke for a one and done. You could go to the G League, like Jonathan Kuminga, who played here at St. Pat's in New Jersey, and Jalen Green from California. You could do that for a year. And then those guys are going to be top 5 picks in the draft next month. This kid, Jaden Hardy from California, or Nevada, I guess, who's been kind of compared to a Russell Westbrook type, just signed with the G League. Now you have this overtime league, which I'm a little, skeptical and dubious about. They're trying to sign high school guys to play in a pro high school league, although they're going to play against prep teams. So there's a lot of different options. And then if you're Coach Cal or Coach K, you have to recruit. Not only are you, battling the other colleges in recruiting, but you also have to battle the G League and the Overtime League and say, hey, I want you to come play for me. This is why it's a better reason, than going to one of these pro leagues. I think for some kids, college is just not it's not the right move for everybody. Obviously, John Kuminga and Jalen Green didn't want to go to college, although I think they may regret it. They may have regretted it a little bit this year because, they barely played in that G League bubble and all their classmates were on TV playing big-time ESPN games. So I think it'll be interesting to see in 2, 3, 4 years check back, especially on those overtime kids. I mean, I'm just not sure of that, if that's a good look for them. Who are you playing against? Is that really better competition for you than college? But it's certainly changed the landscape of recruiting. And, they're paying these kids, 6-figure contracts when they're 18, 19 years old.
A lot of times, Adam, here on the show, this is, I guess, a separate point, but we like to play a game which we call Mount Rushmore of whatever. Let's say, greatest NBA players. Since we're talking about Coach K, and we've already definitely made it clear that he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, is he on your Mount Rushmore of great college basketball coaches? And if not, who is?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously has to be on it. I mean, look, John Wooden won 10 championships at UCLA. Obviously, he's up there. Coach K has to be up there. There's only a handful of guys I think who've won 3 or more titles. Coach Knight, Bobby Knight, won 3. Jim Calhoun at UConn, who's now coaching Division III school. I believe it's in Connecticut, St. Joseph. He won 3 championships. A guy who's still coaching right now, Jay Wright, who's I think only 59 years old, has 2 championships at Villanova. He's going to coach, another 10, 15 years?
Maybe more.
Maybe more. So he's going to have multiple chances, including next year. When Coach K has 5, Roy Williams had 3, Jay Wright had 2. So now when these other 2 dudes retire, depending on who wins the title next year, Jay Wright's going to have more championships than any active coach. More than Cal, more than Bill Self, Jim Boeheim, Tom Izzo. A lot of people don't realize that. So I don't know if Jay Wright's on my, Mount Rushmore right now, but
he might be.
He can throw the frisbee. I've thrown the frisbee with him a couple of times, so he gets bonus points for that.
Pretty cool.
And I was gonna say, with the NBA draft coming up, in July, your thoughts on the top 5 picks in the NBA draft? And me personally, everyone's saying I know Cade Cunningham, but I think that kid Suggs got something special.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Suggs, great player. I think obviously it'll depend on who gets the number 1 pick. Cade Cunningham, tremendous player. I covered him in high school at Montverde. 6'7", tremendous playmaker, great court vision. Chose to go to Oklahoma State. He could have gone to the G League or something. But I think that top 5 is going to be Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, the 7-footer from USC, Jalen Suggs, and then John Kuminga and Jalen Green. And that's a pretty loaded top 5 right there. I mean, those guys are all, freak athletes. But you're right. Jalen Suggs just looks like an NBA player right now, doesn't he? I mean, when he was playing for Gonzaga in those games, he just looked like he could go into an NBA game and help a team right now. He obviously hit that huge shot off the window to beat UCLA. So the draft should be interesting. After that top 5, it's kind of wide open. And but again, you're gonna have a couple guys from the G League going there in the top 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think this draft is probably as first top 5 players, probably one of the best in the last 10 years?
I think most of the draft experts say this is been a very strong draft. All 5 of those guys I think could end up really helping an NBA team. I talked to I did a couple of G League stories during the season, and the Brian Shaw, who coached that G League Ignite team, compared John Kuminga, I think, to Jaylen Brown a little bit, and so one of their players compared him to Kawhi Leonard and said that was his upside. I mean, that's obviously pretty high praise. But I think having covered Jonathan Kuminga at St. Pat's, it's going to be really fascinating to watch him. I mean, he's the kid who came over here from the Congo and Africa, and just a phenomenal upside. And just a random stat, you guys know who Kevin Boyle is? The coach at Montverde. He's the former St. Pat's coach. If Cade Cunningham goes number one, Kevin Boyle will have coached 4 number 1 picks in the last decade: Kyrie, Ben Simmons. Who am I missing? Cade and somebody else I'm spacing on. But he will have had 7 top 3 picks.
Get him a college job.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, I too have seen Jonathan and Jalen Green play as well. I mean, he's just unbelievable. Very much like in terms of the athleticism and dunking a basketball, like someone like Cassius Stanley, but I think actually might be a more polished player.
Oh yeah, Jalen Green's a lot of fun to watch. Can dunk it, can get out in transition. It'll be interesting who gets those top picks, and then what numbers do the Nets and the Knicks pick right now?
19 and 21 the Knicks have.
Yeah, so they can get some good players there. I saw a couple mock drafts where they're getting a bunch of experienced players who could help them.
Do you think that the path for the Knicks, I mean, if they are, let's say that this is not like an anomaly where, this season just because we've said that maybe for Randall, this is a career year. Maybe this is one of those magical seasons for the Knicks. If they are actually trending, of course, in the right direction, what is the path for them to take steps forward? Is it going to have to be through the draft? Because you mentioned that a lot of players, still might be a bit skeptical about coming to New York, even though I think maybe that narrative might have changed now because Tibbs is here.
Yeah, I definitely think that narrative has changed, and that's I know some of the ESPN guys were talking about that today. That's kind of the big picture where you have to hope for as a Knicks fan is that the perception of the culture has changed. The whole thing with kicking Charles Oakley out of the Garden, and Spike Lee had a problem at the Garden. They busted his chops about using the wrong elevator or whatever it was. That kind of stuff is I think a really bad look for NBA players. They're not going to want to come deal with that. And the whole thing with KD saying they weren't cool, I think that's true. That was true. But now it looks like they have it together with Leon Rose and Wes making the decisions, and they're back on the right track, getting to the playoffs. And you got to hope that foundation attracts somebody. It's the guys we mentioned before, Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal, these guys, Donovan Mitchell. These guys aren't free agents. They're not coming to New York right now. But you got to hope that the equivalent of what happened with the Nets, KD and Kyrie, some superstars out there say, hey, I want to go to New York. I like the culture there. I want to play at the Garden. I like the crowd and how they get all fired up in the playoffs. And I want to take New York to where these guys are taking the Nets. Who those guys are going to be, I think that remains to be seen.
Adam, it always fascinates me because
willing to do it, whenever that was, 10 years ago. Amari Stoudemire kind of late in his career took that risk. Carmelo was obviously traded here, but then embraced the New York thing and tried to make it work. And the one year they won 54 games with Jason Kidd and that older, more veteran team and got to the playoffs. So it takes a certain kind of personality to want to come to New York and embrace the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say it always fascinates me because we mentioned it a bit earlier about the fact that, you could have a very good roster, a very good team. I thought Danny Ainge had done a great job in Boston, and them just winning one championship goes to show that, you make a blockbuster trade, or in his case, he actually made, I would say, 2 big blockbuster trades, set up the franchise to potentially win another championship. But it just goes to show how difficult it is to actually collect those trophies. And the Nets might be in that boat right now. We'll see, even if the Knicks, even if they have turned things around, whether or not they can actually translate it into more than just winning one first-round playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, look, winning a championship in any sport is hard. I'm a huge Yankees fan. I watch the Yankees almost every day. They have theoretically have had a team capable of winning a championship here in the last 2, 3, 4 years. They don't have one, and it's going to be a failure of Aaron Boone and Aaron Judge and this current team if they don't win a championship. You mentioned the Celtics a couple years ago, just a year ago, 2 years ago, everyone was saying, "Oh, the Celtics are the future of the Eastern Conference. Look at all these young, talented players: Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, all these guys." And now in the last 5 years, they got to, I think, 3 conference finals, a semi, and now they're out in the first round. Danny Ainge steps down. They're in a little bit of turmoil right now. They got to get a new coach, and they've been eclipsed by the Nets and the Sixers and the Bucks in the East. They still have great young pieces. Jason Tatum's probably going to be an MVP of the league in the next 5 years. But, right now they've been eclipsed by these other teams. And then, as far as the Knicks, they're not a championship contender right now. Let's face facts. They're not one of the elite teams in the NBA. They had a nice season. They got to the playoffs. But in order to compete for a championship, you got to do this year in, year out. You got to have at least 2 superstars, right? We've seen that the past several years. You got to have multiple, A-list superstars to compete and win championships, and they don't have that.
Well, Zags, before we let you go, we definitely wanted you to give a little love to what you're working on and tell the fans at home. I mean, you're always working on stories. I mean, I even joked before about the phone. Obviously, your phone going off the whole show. Usually that's Edgar's phone. So it's you tonight, basketball insider extraordinaire.
Yeah, look, I love to cover a mix of things, high school recruiting, college hoops, the NBA. I've been writing a lot about the Nets this season. Everybody can check out my Jim Boeheim Coach Until He's 80 story on Forbes. And it's just a great time for hoops right now, right? You got the NBA playoffs, you got the draft coming up. So Knicks fans, you got to just hang in there and hope that your team can build through a combination of the draft and maybe free agency. And the Nets, we just got to keep an eye on, this series with the Bucks. I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch. A lot of high-power games.
You definitely do it all, my friend, whether it's rock and roll or the U.S. Open or basketball. It's great to have you on the show.
Zag says he has 10 jobs.
I'm not getting rich from any of them, but I'm having fun.
It's great stuff.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take it.
Coming on, Zach. Appreciate you.
All right.
That was awesome. Good time. Yeah. Might be tired tonight, but it was definitely worth it to see you, my friend, and also to talk to Adam. It's always great to get his perspective. I mean, like I said, I joked before, but I really think just the insight from him is marvelous from top to bottom about all the different teams here in New York.
No, Adam's one of the good guys. He's definitely one of the good guys. I definitely want to give you a shout out because I know you've been going hard, and I know last week you was in doing the Indianapolis 500. I hope you had a good time. I hope you got into a car. Shout out, and we don't say it enough, but shout out to Randy Cruz for always doing things behind the scenes and driving me crazy because you don't respond in our group texts as much, and I think you think you're better than us, and I'm getting tired of it. So next week when I do say something in a group text, you need to respond, not just K or okay. Yeah, that's corny. Is corny. Okay, it's corny.
Oh my goodness! I show up. That's all that matters. You might not hear from me, but when the red dot is on here in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, I'm here. That's all that matters.
Yes, you are.
I had a great time Indy 500. I mean, I'm definitely. I don't want to say feeling the effects of it, but we go low budget with things when it comes to television here in the Bronx. So I drove to Indianapolis. So
you drove there?
I drove to Indianapolis and back. Yeah. It's 11 and a half hours, Ed. So you add that in with some 7-day work weeks. Today I taught some motorcycles here in the Bronx, loving life. I got to get up early tomorrow.
I feel like you were from the Bronx. That was the question.
I'm born and raised, man. This is where I live, where I'm from, what I represent, you know. And actually, speaking of that, I'm going to give a little shout out to my T-shirt here. Raised on concrete. Yes. And that is a good place for us to probably segue and give a little shout out to Hoops in the Sun, which is coming back, folks. July is just around the corner. Hoops in the Sun will be back, which means we're going to have some street ball. I don't like to call it street ball. I'm going to say pro-am basketball.
Yeah.
Pro-am basketball at Orchard Beach. The Bronx Riviera in the BX. Hoops in the Sun coming back at you July of 21. That's a good place to probably end it, right? That's where the promo from Randy should just go across the screen.
Randy wasn't prepared today. He was supposed
there it is. Look at the date, July 3rd. That is a big weekend. That's the holiday weekend right there. So celebrate America. Celebrate Hoops in the Sun. Come out, see your boys. I know Edgar's going to be there.
I'll be there on Sunday with the guys.
That sounds good.
You need to come out.
I'm not coming. You go. I'm not going. I'm not going.
I get it.
But if you text me to ask me to come, I'll reply K or okay. And maybe I'll show up.
Are we back? Are we back next Thursday? That's all I care about.
If you need me to be, yeah. I think, listen, there's a lot of great people out there, Ed. You could go get Coach K. I'm pretty sure Zags would do this with you every week. There's options. You might even be able to, maybe one of these other big wigs out there might be like, all right, you know what? I like the podcast.
Last week I told Randy when I had Tim Thomas, he was like, how'd it go? I said, I felt lost without Bobby.
You know what kills me is I did plenty of research. I know already a lot about Tim Thomas, but I researched about Tim Thomas and it's wasted. It's right here on my computer. It's just, it's a waste. I think you should kind of do like a mulligan, like a redo of that show. Let me come back on and ask my questions. Cause I'm sure you just asked him current stuff, nothing about his like career probably.
I asked him past stuff. I did. I tried to, it was weird because, I wasn't, I do one-on-one podcasts, but I'm obviously, it's different when you're doing this type of show because, I kind of feed off your questions. And this time I wasn't feeding off your questions. I was just feeding off myself. And, it kind of threw me off a little bit. We had a good time, but, you was definitely missed.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, listen, we feed off of each other, I would say. I mean, many times that's how it goes. I think the hardest part with the podcast, I don't know if our fans at home can kind of see this, but it's always kind of deciding when to kind of jump back in. I mean, I feel like we have pretty much very casual conversations with our guests, and that's that's what makes podcasting great. And hopefully, people are enjoying the show, and we're happy to have them tuning in. But I think the hardest part is that you and I have chemistry all these years, and so many of our guests are people that we're of course very familiar with. So hopefully, they come on and have a good time, whether we're having good days or bad days or too tired to do stuff. I was napping before this, but I woke up for you, Ed.
Right,
I'm tired.
I'll let you go back to napping
and go to sleep.
I'm going to let you go back to sleep. And then next Thursday, we're back at it, 9:30. So you have 7 days to at least to rest. So
I might rest all the way until then, Ed.
And I'll respond to my texts.
All right, I will respond. Definitely, and, sending you much love to you and your family, and definitely, happy to be back. And I should have had coffee tonight, though. I think it would have made me a bit sharper, but it's okay. Hopefully, Randy can edit this, make us look, better, sound better. The highlights are usually the best part, right?
Hold on. Before we leave, I just want to give Randy congratulations. He's making some things happen at Baller's Life. Me personally, I joke with Randy a lot, but I'm super proud of him. Dreams do come true. You're working hard and keep fighting.
Awesome stuff. And I think that's a great place for us to close out the show tonight. Hopefully Edgar will figure out how to put this microphone together, folks.
I'll do that. I'm going to work on that.
No clue on how to put it together. Again, check out the behind the scenes documentary of Step in the Arena coming out in 2022.
Later.
We'll see you next week.